did they get away with this? Why did my mom not stop me from watching this? And I mean, Han shot first. That's really all I'm going to say about. I bought a ticket to this movie, and on the same day snuck in to see the original The Karate Kid.
Okay.
So I was a little bit of a delinquent when it came to movies back then.
All right, friends, thank you so much for checking out this video. I am excited about this. I haven't done an episode of The Five in a while. And Dell and I have been working on this for a little bit now. So, Dell, thank you so much for coming on the channel.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to it, man.
Cool. I'm looking forward to hearing all of your recommendations. And so, friends, if you are brand new to this series, I ask 5 questions to fellow movie collectors, and they respond to each question with 5 films. So you get to hear a conversation about movies, which all of us are all about. We get 25 film recommendations, and we get to learn a little bit more about fellow collectors. So, Dell, I'm looking forward to this, man. And before I get into the 5, I always like to ask at least one question. And this is kind of a 3-parter, but it's about one thing. So on your channel, one of the things I love is you have the movie swap. And how did that idea come up? How did you get started? What was your kind of like your motivation for doing that one?
I mean, it's a culmination of really a lifelong of talking movies with people. And really about 15 years ago, I used to work at Blockbuster, I guess if you want to put a genesis to it. And when you're a Blockbuster employee, you constantly get asked, what movie should I get? You think this is a good one? How about this one? And I wind up recommending a lot of movies to a lot of people. And with Blockbusters, a lot of return customers. So I always got their opinion back on and got their feedback on how well I did pretty well. And even with my family, it's like, hey, you should watch this, you should watch that. And they do the same for me. And trying to find something that would keep me engaged and interested in doing YouTube. Doing videos is great, but I want to interact with people. And so I was like, hey, you know what? Why don't we just talk about movies? I want to watch a bunch of movies either in my collection or just not in my collection. We all have a watch list a mile long.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everybody else does. Why don't they have me watch something I've never seen? I do the same for them, and we'll just go from there.
Cool. Friends, if you haven't seen the series, all links for Dell, for Instagram, YouTube will be down below, but check out the series. It's a ton of fun. And so Dell will have a guest on. You got a guest on, and you ask them to give you 10 recommendations, and then you give them 10 recommendations, and then each person picks one, and you watch them and you talk about them. So my questions for you, you've done quite a few of these now, so you've gotten a bunch of lists. I have 3 questions for you. Have you ever gotten a list from someone and you saw them all 10?
Not yet. I've gotten, I think, 3 lists, I think, that I've seen 9.
Wow, that's insane.
But not yet, not one yet that I've gotten all 10. And I've had people worry, they've messaged me back and like, man, I don't know. I think you might have seen everything I'm going to put. I haven't seen everything. Just put it out there.
Yeah.
And it could be a really big movie that I've never seen or something a little more obscure. So just put it out there. And if by chance, I have seen everything, I'll just tell, I've already planned this, like, hey, just give me a couple more and we'll figure it out.
Crazy. So the next one, have you ever gotten a list and you saw none of the 10?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
I think the lowest might have been about 3 or 4.
Okay. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then the last one, and you don't have to name any names, especially if it's me. But have you ever gotten a list where you're like, oh, I don't want to watch any of these films, but you were kind enough to do it? But have you ever gotten a list where you're like, this is actually going to be work?
Not yet.
Okay,
Not
good.
yet. No, because I'm a person I'm pretty open to genre and styles, and so if you send me a list of all horror movies, cool. If you send me a list of all dark comedies, cool. Whatever it is, I like to try to watch a little bit of everything. So I haven't gotten any lists. It's just like, no, I'm not gonna watch it. Now, if you were gonna send me a bunch of stuff like Human Centipede and Salo, then yeah, that would be one. But oh no.
Because when I sent you, sending you lists, I was thinking, I was like, man, like if it was me, if someone sent me all horror or like period pieces, even like a lot of like rom-coms, like for me, I was like, man, I'd be Yeah, I'd have to be very gracious to just watch something that I was like, this is going to be a challenge.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason for 10, because it's like, you get a list, and if there are two or three or four that you haven't seen, you can pick the least painful one.
It's a good way of putting it, the least painful. Cool, man. Well, Dell, let's jump into the five. I'm looking forward to seeing your recommendations, man.
All right.
All right. So the first question for you, what five films have you most recently seen? I've got my paper and pen ready to go.
All right. So the five that I've most recently seen, I don't have all of the five because I actually streamed a couple, and I'm looking over here because I have a table full of movies right here. So the five movies that I most recently have seen, I had two of them. I don't have the other three. The two that I have is We're the Millers, and I'm going to put it here because my black background's all blurry right now. And We're the Millers. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that or you know what
Mm-hmm.
that movie
Yep.
is. It's really Jennifer Aniston, Jason Sudeikis. He's a low time, drug dealer, small time drug dealer, gets into some trouble, has to do an odd job. It Pretend he has to use a pretend family, which is where Jennifer Aniston comes in. And it's a fun movie. I like it. It's funny. It makes me laugh. It's not a masterpiece or anything, but I can put it in and have a good time. So that's where that is.
Nice.
The next one is the Justice League. This is an animated movie, Justice League Flashpoint Paradox. I watched this in preparation for The Flash, which I still have not gone and seen. And the story here basically is that the Flash, he's one of his villains is called Reverse Flash, and he's clashing with him, and this guy has it out for the Flash, and they at the beginning it seems that the Flash defeated him, but what really happens, he had to run so fast he goes back in time. If you're familiar with the Flash, that's how his powers work, and when he goes back in time, it's more like actually not really back in time, but even to another universe where certain things in his past didn't happen. Namely, his mother is not dead because one of the parts of his origin story is that his mom was killed when he was young. In this universe, she is alive, and then the movie has to figure out what's going on. How does he save the universe, and does he have to sacrifice his mom again to do it? So
Gotcha.
those two movies, and if you're not into DC animated, I get it. I understand. Superhero geeks like me are, so I watch that stuff. The next one I watched is The Last Duel. Matt Damon
Oh
in that
yeah.
movie. Ben Affleck is in that movie. Adam Driver, Jodie Comer, and that was medieval times, set in medieval times. I did that on Movie Swap last week. Um, the, Matt Damon's wife in the movie, she says she's raped by Adam Driver, and Adam Driver and Matt Damon are frenemies, I guess would be the best way to put it. They work together, or they were friends, and now they're kind of on the outs a bit. And Adam Driver's a nobleman. He's works closely with the king, and Matt Damon is a loyal soldier to the king, but he decides, hey, this guy did this to my wife. I'm gonna sue him, and we're gonna try to get him punished somehow. And then you go through. It's a lot like Rashomon. If you're familiar with Rashomon, in that we tell the story in different parts, everybody's point of view. We get the three main characters' point of view for sections of the movie, and then it kind of wraps up at the end. Pretty solid movie.
Cool.
Jodie Comer is fantastic in this film. Uh, Ben Affleck is an odd presence because he's sporting this blonde wig that's just terrible. Overall though, Adam Driver is really good. Matt Damon is really good, so I definitely would recommend that one.
Cool.
The fourth one is the other movie that I watched for Movie Swap, which is Bad Words. I do have that one, but I can't put my hands on it for some reason. Bad Words is Jason Bateman, and he's a 40-year-old guy, and he enters a spelling bee for kids. He's into like the 10-year-olds, and in the spelling bee, he enters it. He's found a loophole that allows him to compete. And our journey with this movie is trying to figure out why he's doing this. Why is he trying to compete? What is he getting out of this? And he is a royal jerk all through the movie. So it's really interesting performance from him because he's always got that dry humor, that kind of witty humor, and he has that here, but it's kind of in a almost like an Al Bundy type package in,
Okay.
in this movie, and it's also a really good movie. The last one is I'm almost ashamed of myself, almost, but stream this one off of Netflix, and this is Money Shot, the Pornhub story. It's a documentary about the history of Pornhub.
Okay.
Um, Really, it's less about the history of it. It does give that early on in the movie, but it's more about how it started to or fall out of favor with content creators and some of the problems they went through a couple of years ago because there was a big scandal where it was found out that a lot of the content on the site was illegally uploaded or depicted some sort of sexual assault or depicted minors and basically the ripples through the industry that caused.
Okay.
And that was actually an interesting watch. Not a great documentary, because it ends up, where it also goes into that the rise of OnlyFans through that, and it's an interesting doc.
Okay. Interesting. The you mentioned The Flash, like you watching that to prep into watching the current film. I'm really excited to watch The Flash, and I'm actually very surprised at how badly it's doing. Were you surprised at how badly it's doing?
I am, because even with DC characters, even their movies that are not doing well, not perceived to be doing well, still taking a pretty good amount of money at the box office, even if they're critically panned and word of mouth. So this was kind of a surprise, and I think it's the consequences really of one what I'm hearing sounds like either rushed filmmaking or just lazy filmmaking and the problems with the star
Gotcha.
over the last 2 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah, the trailers all look great. I thought with Michael Keaton being in it, it'd be a massive draw just for that alone. So I
Mm-hmm.
was very surprised to see it doing so badly, but it is on my list. I want to see it, and I just hope it's still in theater in the next week or so.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm gonna see it. It's just a matter of when and where. Am I gonna get to a theater or am I gonna have to watch it at home? We'll find out.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. Next question. What five films do you have your earliest memories from?
All right. So the earliest film that I can remember seriously watching and going to the theater was Enter the Dragon. And it came out when I was 2 years old. Now I saw it in the theater, but I'm pretty positive it wasn't when I was 2 years old. And back then, movies would stay in theaters for a year sometimes, and then they would, go out of the theaters and come back within a year or 2 years. So I'm pretty sure I saw it when I was about 4 or 5. But it started my lifelong love of Bruce Lee. He's one of my cinematic heroes. And then as I've gotten older, you hear about other things that he did and accomplished. So he became a hero in that way.
Cool.
Excuse me, because I'm dealing with the cold here. um, the next one is an older movie than that, but it's one that I saw on TV. I don't know, 100, 150 times as a kid. It's Batman, the movie from 1966, Adam West. And it is a hilarious movie. When you're a kid, you get into the bang pow kind of thing that is known for, and it's a lot of fun. And you get into the performances, the over the top mustache twirly villains. Watching it as an adult is still fun for me because there are so many double entendres, sexual double entendres, just snuck into this movie. It's like, how did they get away with this? And why did my mom not stop me from watching this? But it's a really fun movie. So it's started my love of Batman between that and the series that accompanied it. All right. So the next movie is going to be in this box set. I don't have the brand new shiny box set, but this is a Superman box set, and it's Superman the movie. I went and saw this movie when it came out in the theaters, and here's where I even question my memory because it might have been 6 months to a year later, but it was in the theater. But there were like three people in the theater besides myself and my dad. And it's rare that I have a memory of anything with my dad because he wasn't really involved in my life. But this is one, and there were, like I said, there were like three people in the theater, and this movie, probably more than any other, got me into the craft of movies because then I wanted to know, how did it make him fly? How did it make him look like he was flying? And then I was also interested in the writing because, believe it or not, I was 8 years old, and I got home from the theater that night, and I took out a yellow legal pad, and I started trying to write from memory the script of the movie.
Wow.
Weirdest thing that any kid would ever do. I'm not sure how successful I was looking back, but in my brain at 8, I had every word, so I don't know.
That's wild, man.
Yeah, it's a, when I tell people that, they have that same reaction. Another movie, pretty classic that everybody talks about all the time, and that is, of course, I say Star Wars, but of course everybody says A New Hope. I have
Sure.
it on Blu-ray. This is a DVD edition, widescreen, and I do have it on Blu-ray, but I keep this around because this too has the theatrical cut of the movie. And I mean, Han shot first. That's really all I'm gonna say about.
That's
It.
good.
Yeah, that's really all I'm gonna say about that. And then there's one other movie that I wanted to talk about that I don't have, and that one is Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Classic.
Yes, absolute classic. I used to, on Sunday morning when I used to wake up, it was the Three Stooges would come on and an Abbott and Costello movie would come on. And I would be glued to the TV watching that. And Abbott and Costello Meets Frankenstein was my favorite of those of their movies. And, you know, they had them on rotation. So maybe every 3 months or so it would play. So I don't know how many times I saw it as a kid. I've seen it a
Wow.
couple times as an adult, but yeah, that I just had to mention that movie.
It is a good one, man.
Yes.
Yeah. All that stuff. I love it. And it's black and white, so it's great. All those movies
Yes.
are great. Cool, man. What five films have had the greatest impact on you? Could be emotionally, worldview, life perspective, any of those kinds of things.
Okay. The first one I'm going to mention is my favorite movie of all time, and that one is Do the Right Thing. And so there's not much to say about this movie that hasn't been said. It just, for me personally, everything about this movie speaks to me. I grew up in New York at that time, uh, in the 80s, and Spike Lee captured it perfectly. I tell people this all the time, that every character in that movie feels like someone I've met, feels like someone I knew when I was growing up,
Mm.
including their viewpoints, their mannerisms a lot of times, and just the way they moved around the neighborhood. And I'm talking about everybody from Mookie, Spike Lee's character, Rosie Perez's character, Danny Aiello's character, every one of them, it feels like somebody that I've come into contact with in real life, in my life. And then you also have to remember that at that time in New York, it was incredibly segregated, even though it's always had a reputation for being a melting pot, and there's all sorts of different nationalities in New York. And while that's true, it's also, there's the Italian neighborhood, there's a black neighborhood, there's the Jewish neighborhood, Dominican neighborhood, so on and so forth. Um, and that all kind of comes through here too. And of course, everything bubbles over at the end of the movie. And I just thought Spike captured that perfectly for me. So this movie's always spoken to me.
That's like the sign of a master storyteller. When, like, for you to say, because if you created a film about where I grew up, or if it's your profession or whatever it is,
mm-hmm.
for you to say, I know all of those people, like, that's a master storyteller who's able to create something that we can actually connect to and go, that's real life. I know this. And it's almost like you're able to step into the film yourself.
Yes, that very much so. I grew up in Queens, which is not exactly the same as Brooklyn. If you were to go to the two, especially back then, I mean, there's a clear difference in environment, but I spent so much time in Brooklyn with friends and family that that was also a second home to me too. So yes, I would agree with that. And that the next movie is actually also a Spike Lee movie, and this one is School Days. Not sure if you have seen School Days or not.
Not
Um, this movie it speaks to me on a different, little bit of a different level. Um, it deals a lot with colorism, and within Black community, what that basically means is light skinned people versus dark skinned people, and that is the main focus of the movie. And then, of course, there's all sorts of other things happening in there. You know, there's a love story, there's a kid trying to make frat and all that. So, and I was a college kid also. I did go to college. So I had those experiences, but I saw this before I went to college. And at that time, and I know everybody can see me in the beautiful brown here, but believe it or not, I was actually darker than this when I was a child, when I was a kid. And so I was on the receiving end of a lot of, dark skin jokes
gotcha.
as a kid. And you build up a resentment towards people when that happens. And I think I've gotten over it as I've grown older, and as my family tells me, I've gotten lighter. But it is a touchy subject within the community, and this movie deals a lot with that and the infighting that comes from that, and also has a great performance from Lawrence Fishburne, who was going by Larry back then,
Hmm.
and Giancarlo Esposito, also a great performance in that film, and it's also kind of a musical, so
Interesting.
I have a lot of fun with that one.
Cool.
And another film, we're gonna go away from Spike Lee. We're actually gonna go across the water, and this one is Old Boy. And 2003, Park Chan Wook is the director. And are you familiar with Old Boy,
I'm
John?
familiar with the film and have read on it, watched the trailer, watched reviews on it, but I've never actually seen the film.
Okay. So I'll definitely not spoil it. Uh, the the synopsis is that the guy on the cover there, he's a drunk at the beginning of the movie. He is drunk, and he gets thrown in jail for a night. He goes into the drunk tank. He gets out, and when he's getting out, someone just grabs him up, kidnaps him, and locks him in a hotel, way up so he can't, readily just get out. There are no windows in the room, and he's in this room for 15 years.
Wow.
And then suddenly they feed him and they do things to keep him alive, but then suddenly one day they just let him out. So now his quest is to find out, of course, who did this to me and why. And it is a revenge flick, and who gets you're not sure who's getting revenge until halfway through the movie, even later. And then when you get to the actual finale of the movie, I mean, it's so twisted, a thing that happens. A lot of things, twisted things happen along the way, but it's so twisted what happens at the end, and so impactful. When I watched it, I pretty much sat stunned the first time. I just sat there for a while,
Wow.
staring at the screen, and it just stuck with me. It didn't change my worldview or anything, but it made me think, what would I do if I were in that situation? And I thought about it for days, the
Wow.
very first time I saw it. And ever since then, I can recall that moment, and it's always, uh, it's never far from the forefront of my mind, I should say. I've seen it several times since, and when I get to the end, it's like, again, it's like, okay, still, what am I going to do if I get to there? And it's a hard question, and it was really interesting. So I'll leave it at that for
Cool.
that movie. The next one is a movie not a lot of people think of really in for this sort of question, and because it's a big action sci-fi movie. But that's the original The Matrix.
So good.
Yes, really, really good, and it deals with so many themes on top of just the action, just the sci-fi. Of course, it's got what's going to happen if machines, computers, etc., take over the world. I mean, we've got lots of movies like that, The Terminator and I, Robot and all sorts of things. But then it brings into question reality. You know, what is reality? What are we really living this thing here? And if you're a conspiracy theorist, you can go off into some other strange directions there. And then, of course, it's just got all the cool stuff that happens. I'm a martial arts fan, big martial arts fan, so it's got lots of that in the movie. And I just thought about it. Yes, another great performance from Lawrence Fishburne, even though he's not the hero this time.
I loved that. I love that film, and I'm a massive fan of the John Wick films. So it was so fun to see those two back together again.
Yes,
The Wick
yes,
films.
absolutely was.
Yeah.
I'm also a fan of the John Wick film. I how'd you like part four? Where would you put it with the others?
I rank it at number two. So for me, I would go one, four, two, three.
I would probably go one, three, four, two.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, for me, it's just the bulletproof suits sometimes get a little out of hand.
That's true.
All
I
right,
would agree.
yeah, yeah. And the last one is a movie that people might not think of, Toy Story 3.
It's great.
Fantastic movie. Um, I've only cried in my life on one movie. It wasn't Toy Story 3. It was actually a movie called The Champ with Ricky Schroeder back way
Yeah.
back in the day. I was 8, 9 years old when I saw it. My parents were going through a divorce. And I'm gonna spoil that movie for anybody who hasn't seen it. I'm sorry, but at the end of that movie, The Champ, I think it was John Voight.
Yep.
He passes away. He dies in the ring. He's a boxer, and when I watched it then, at first I just kind of sat there for a minute, kind of mulling it over. And then my mom had let me stay up to watch it. She didn't know what was going to happen, but she let me stay up to watch it that night for some reason. I think because I was a big boxing fan. I was a Muhammad Ali guy. But so then when I slinked off to bed, I just started crying uncontrollably. Well, that was the last time I cried at a movie. Years later, 2010, Toy Story 3 comes out. I'm an adult. I have children. I have my nieces and nephews with me. We go see Toy Story 3 and we get to the incinerator scene.
Yeah.
And I could just feel it all just coming up and you get that big knot in your throat. And I kind of look around at my kids. They're younger at the time. And like I said, I had my nieces and nephews with me. It was a big thing. And, they're kind of into it. I was way more into it than they were. But that's the movie that put me closest to actually just full on just crying since then. And in the years since, any movie that's really gotten me close have oddly been animated movies. But yeah, I had to mention Toy Story 3.
Yeah, man, that scene is intense. Like I went with my niece and nephew and my wife and brother and his wife. And yeah, I got to that scene. I was like, wow, this is like a lot for an adult. And you're right. Kids were kind of like, oh, that's crazy. But
Yeah.
adults were sitting there getting the emotional weight of this
Oh
all.
yeah. Oh man. And it was funny because I'm sitting there watching it, and you know how you get that you lean forward in your chair and kind of scooting forward a bit, and then emotion is kind of knocking you back at the same time. And I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness. And yeah, take that peek over to the side, and they're like,
That's my wife, man. I admittedly am a pretty easy crier in films. My wife, nothing. And so I tease her that she's dead inside. And then she'll like look at me when she knows something's getting emotional. She'll look at me. So if there's a film I know is emotional, I watch it by myself. I don't need the mockery.
You know what's
So
crazy is it's the exact opposite in my house. My wife will cry over just about any movie. I mean, if something happens to the hero in the movie, she's gonna cry.
okay.
If there's a any moment that's even minutely heartfelt, she's welling up. And I will do what your wife does to you because I know it's coming. We're sitting there watching, I know it's coming, and then I'm like, so I get
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty evil, man.
it. I
Cool,
apologize.
cool. It's all good, man. I'm used to it now. So Cool. Well, next one is, what five films do you consider to be underrated films?
All right. So underrated. It When you asked me this question, that was the hardest one for me because there were so many. It's like, okay, I could go this and this and this and this, and it's like, maybe I don't want this one. I don't want that one. So I think I got five that I'm happy with. The first one came out just a few years ago, and this movie stars Lakeith Stanfield, and this is called Sorry to Bother You. And I'm sorry I'm putting the movies past my face, but my background is blurry here. So Sorry to Bother You. We meet Lakeith Stanfield, uh, and he's out of work, kind of a deadbeat. He's living in, I think it's his brother's garage, and he's got his girlfriend actually living with him in the garage, and she's kind of getting fed up with him, but she loves him, so she sticks around. And he finally gets a job. He gets a job telemarketing, and as it turns out, he discovers he has a knack for it, and he becomes a fast riser through the company. And with that comes a lot of issues, and we deal with one of those issues, of course, is you're no longer one of us. That kind of issue, that if you've worked the job for any length of time, either you were promoted and other people looked at you as no longer one of us, or someone else was promoted and you kind of get that side eye towards that person. So you get the relatability of that. Um, then for me, it also deals with code switching. And if you're not familiar with code switching, what that is basically when a ethnic person or person of color changes the way they speak and behave in certain settings to help them get ahead, either at their job or at school or something like that. So the way that, and a lot of us do it subconsciously and some purposely, but and even people who are not people of color, even white people, you're not always going to talk to the people in your house or the people that you hang out with on a regular basis the same way you're going to go and talk to your boss.
Mhm.
Right. It's just that with people of color, it's a little more pronounced, and it's like, okay, you're purposely trying, or you're making an effort to not sound like you are black or Hispanic or whatever it is you are. So it deals a lot with that, and then it just deals with corporate America greed on top of that, and some really strange things also happen, which is why I think this movie doesn't get as much love as it deserves. And there's a point in the movie, and I don't want to spoil this in case you actually want to watch it, but there's basically a point in the movie where you have to decide if you're in or you're out. This is what
Okay.
happens. There will come a point when you go, okay, I'm done, I'm good, or you're like, oh, I'm in there now. And for me, when I got that point, I was in there, but when I went to the theater and saw it, several people were out and stood up and walked out. So,
Wow.
so I fully understand. It's a kind of a, you know, kind of an odd movie, polarizing. And if you're in, then you're all the way in till the end, and then you kind of sit back and go, okay, what did I just watch? what,
Okay.
what did I just watch? So Sorry to Bother You is one that I recommend cautiously.
All right.
I'll keep it
I'll look
that
into
way.
this one. I've never heard of it.
Yes. The director, by the way, is I'm having trouble with his remembering his name right now. It is, what is his name? I'll think of it. There it is. Boots Riley. Boots Riley. It's a debut film. Uh, he's got a series coming out now. I forget the name of it, but anyway, Boots Riley. For some people, they might know him as he was a rapper as part of a
Yeah.
group back in the day. So
I
debut.
know him from Street Sweeper Social Club with Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine.
There you go. Yeah, yeah,
So they
yeah,
did an album and an EP together, and that's how I was introduced to Boots.
yeah. Okay, cool. Um, so I had no idea he was ever interested in filmmaking. So, and didn't really know it was him until I saw the movie. And it comes up directed by Boots Riley. Like, oh,
That's wild. Cool.
yeah.
I'll have to check that out.
Uh, Next movie is a movie called Beach Street from the '80s. I've snuck into the theater to see this movie on. Okay, let me switch it around. I bought a ticket to this movie and on the same day snuck in to see the original The Karate Kid.
Oh, okay.
So I was a little bit of a delinquent when it came to movies back then. So Beat Street, it came out. It had the misfortune of coming out the same year as Breaking, and I'm a lifelong hip hop fan, and Breaking was the more fun movie, the popular movie, the goofier movie. This one took a little bit more of a serious go at hip hop, and it dealt with the characters more seriously, and it had included, all of the elements of hip hop, because people think hip hop, they think, okay, we're just rapping, but that's not what hip hop actually started out as. Yeah, there's rapping, DJing is another element, graffiti was another element, the breakdancing was another element, and all of these things combined to make hip hop. And that I think was better portrayed in this movie. Again, a more serious movie. Ray Don Chong is in the movie. The cast members are really inexperienced actors, but I thought they did pretty well uh, for what they were for their experience level. Let me put it that way. They did pretty well for their experience level, and you do get breakdancing and rapping and all those things. So it's a memory lane, trip down memory lane. Maybe you have some nostalgia for that era. I don't know.
Hmm.
Um, but I like it. It's one of my favorite hip hop movies, and I always have a fun time watching that movie.
So
Uh,
now for you, is for hip hop, as a fan of hip hop, is the 80s kind of your thing, or with the 90s? Is there a certain decade that you're like, when you see a film or you are listening to an album, that it's really like, it's like, oh man, that is like, that was the pinnacle for me.
for me, I'd say 90s.
Cool.
I'd say 90s. 80s was my high school years, and I've got a lots of love for those, but most of my favorites come from the 90s.
Cool.
All right. And next movie is from the Hughes brothers, and this one is Dead Presidents. We desperately need at least a Blu-ray, if not a 4K of this movie. And this movie, I just rewatched it recently because I did do this on Movie Swap with someone, and I have always been on record as saying that is the more mature of their first two movies. Their first movie was Menace to Society,
Mhm.
and that movie is a fan favorite. Everybody loves that movie. It's got the Criterion release a year or two ago, and it's a fantastic movie. Rewatching this one a few months back, yeah, again, I'm reminded. Yeah, it's definitely the more mature movie, and I would say that it is actually the better overall movie. It has the better artistic vision, but it's not quite as bombastic as Menace to Society, and it's not as fun to see things happen in Menace to Society. Because with that movie, you get kind of uh, I don't want to say what I'm going to say, but you get a kind of a train wreck reaction. You just watching a train wreck with Menace to Society, and that aspect is here for Dead Presidents. Our main character, Lorenz Tate, again is the star, and we meet him in high school, and he enlists and goes to Vietnam. This is essentially a Vietnam vet story. We spend some time with him in Vietnam, and then when he comes back, we see how he's treated once he's back in the real world. And we've had a lot of stories about Vietnam vets like that, and it's not going well for him. So he's got to do something desperate. And again, I won't reveal everything, but I mean, it's a heist movie also at its
Yeah.
core. But I really think that is the better of the two movies, but Menace is the more fun one. And
Mhm.
I will say this about this movie: if you're into camera work, there are some great shots in this movie, and it has one of the best transitions I've ever seen. Uh, and I'm gonna go ahead and spoil that, but when you see it, you'll understand. Um, Lorenz Tate, like I said, we meet him in high school, and he's in high school. He's sneaking out of his girlfriend's house. One of those things where he was up there with his girlfriend. I think his mom came home, so he's hopping out the window. When he hops out the back window, he goes, hopping fences and running through backyards. And so seamlessly, it just transitions into him running through the jungle in Vietnam.
Mhm.
It's just a fantastic shot. Um, the Next one is that was that three? Yeah,
I
that's
remember the first when I saw that film. That's an intense film.
it
I
is
remember
very
seeing it.
intense.
I was fairly young. I remember watching it and going, "Wow!" Like it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. When I was done, like you have to think about that, and
Yes.
like you're not. Yeah, it is an intense film, man.
Yes, it is very intense. The next one is another recent movie. I think it came out last year. I want to say 2022. Uh, Flew under the radar. Uh, we got Regina Hall, Sterling K. Brown, both giving fantastic performances, and the movie's called "Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul." Are you familiar with this movie at all?
I haven't seen it, but I'm familiar with it.
Okay. It's a mockumentary. And Sterling K. Brown's character was an televangelist. He had a mega church. You know, he was one of those guys, and there was a scandal. We don't know what the scandal is at the beginning of the movie. We just know it was a scandal, and it pretty much decimated his evangelism career. And he's planning a comeback. They're going to reopen their church, and he hired a documentary team to film it. And then we get ups and downs of what's happening, and of course eventually we get the scandal. And it's a comedy. It's a great satire of religious life, especially black religious life. If anyone has experienced that or is just familiar with the things that go on in black churches and with black ministry and the clergy, it pretty much satirizes all of that. And I think part of the problem why it didn't get as much love as I think it deserves is when you watch the trailer for it, it can be easy to think that this is just a faith-based movie.
Okay,
And when you get there and go through it, and if you're a person who's strongly inclined that way, you might be really disappointed.
okay,
Like they're making fun of us, kind of thing.
gotcha.
So, but I really enjoyed this movie. I think it deserves a lot more love. And like I said, Regina Hall and Sterling K. Brown are just fantastic in this movie. So
Cool.
I would
I have to
definitely,
look into that. I saw it. I've seen it out and about, and yeah, I need to look into that one.
yeah. I, again, I really enjoy it, and um, it's kind of depends on which way you lean as far as how religious you are. If you're really religious, I could see you looking at the movie and be like, no, that's that's not for me.
You know what? I remember The Simpsons, watching The Simpsons, and some of their critiques on religion, but and this is like earlier Simpsons,
Yeah.
and it not being offensive, seeing it and going, no, that's actually really accurate.
Mm.
And that's not a it's almost not a criticism. It's just a hey, it's almost like a mirror going, hey, this is real there,
Yes.
just so you
Yes.
know. And I thought The Simpsons, at least earlier seasons, I haven't watched it in a decade and a half or more,
Me
two
neither,
decades.
but yes, but I
Yeah.
understand.
But I thought they actually handled that really well and did a great job of, you know, thinking critically through religion and but not in a mocking way. It was more in a just a mirror going, hey, this is real, just so you know. So I thought
Yeah.
they did that very well.
And I think what it comes down to is I think this movie did that well, but the outcome is not what the outcome would be if it were strictly a faith-based movie.
Gotcha.
So
I need to check
and
it
I
out.
think yeah, that's where the rub is, I think, anyway.
Okay.
All right. And my fifth one is a lot more mainstream. It gets a lot of hate, and I don't understand why. It's not. It's from this franchise, the Terminator franchise, and
Okay.
it's Terminator 3.
Okay.
I have to defend this movie. I get it. Everybody thinks T2 is the greatest movie in the world. And then they put Terminator, the original one, slightly below it. Yeah, I kind of tend to flip them, but I understand either way. But then they'll all just crap on T3. And for me, T3 did what it finished the franchise or should have finished the franchise the way in a way that is hard hitting and kind of makes us pause and think about what we're doing as far as society goes. And and all along the way, I have a lot of fun with the movie. I know it's got its flaws, no doubt, but that ending for me, it's not an uplifting one for anybody who hasn't seen T3. It's not an uplifting ending, but it is one that again will just kind of make you think like, man, if we keep going in this way, this is a real possibility.
Gotcha.
And that's why I really enjoy this film, and I thought that was just a brave way to end the franchise before years went by and we got more Terminator movies.
That's cool, man. You know what? Terminator is one of those films where like, or even series, like a series of films where I've seen a clip, I've seen parts of T2, but I've
uh,
just never, I don't know if it's just, I don't have like this monster interest in it. But yeah, when you said everyone thinks it's the greatest movie, I'm like, yeah, everyone tells me T2 is the greatest thing. So
mhm.
someday I'll grab it, but yeah.
And I know you're not an action guy.
Yeah, I like for me, action would be like the first John Wick film,
Right.
in my opinion, is the greatest action. I love that. Die Hard's great, but yeah. I guess the sci-fi action, I guess I probably don't get into that as much.
I got it. Got you.
Yeah.
Got you. I understand.
But I need to. Well, cool, man. Last question. What five films bring you the most joy? The hope, laughter, they put a smile on your face.
All right. This was the most fun question for me, even though it's
Good.
kind of tough to narrow it down because we all got a bunch of just comfort food type of films.
Yeah.
This one actually could have been with the movies I have earliest memories of, and it used to play on late night TV, the late movie. I don't know if you remember
Yeah.
those days back in the day. This is The Warriors.
Okay. Yeah.
And I just have a blast with this movie. I mean, you get into all the colors with the gangs and when you say it on the surface, oh, you're kind of supporting and glorifying gang activity, da 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 da. Not no, not with this movie. It's just goofy fun. It's just so goofy fun. And have you seen The Warriors?
I have not seen it.
Yeah, these guys. There's a big summit basically in New York, big summit where someone has invited all the gangs down to try to take over the city. And we get this guy who's the leader of the biggest gang in the city. His name is Cyrus, and he's holding court with all these members out there. And someone shoots and kills him while they're there. And now everyone thinks it's the Warriors, which is the gang that we're following for the movie. And then basically they're in Manhattan, I believe, and they have to make it home to Coney Island, and they didn't drive there, so they have to basically fight their way home. And it's just so goofy fun. And even if you've never seen a movie, you've probably seen pictures and clips. You got the
Mhm.
gang that's dressed up like baseball team, and the gang on roller skates, and the gang that's dressed up like they're going to a disco. It's just a lot of fun. Another movie. Next one is for me maybe my favorite comedy of all time, and that is Coming to America. I just love this movie. I went and I saw this movie when it came out. I do remember going with my best friend, my younger brother, and his younger brother. So the four of us went and weren't quite clear what to expect, but we all loved Eddie Murphy, not Coming to America, but Beverly Hills Cop. We had seen those, we'd seen Trading Places, so on and so forth. And so we go see this movie, and within 10 minutes, we get this scene where Eddie Murphy's in this swimming pool of a bathtub, and young lady comes up out of the water and says, "Your Highness, the royal penis is clean." And I was done right there. I was like, okay, we're here. We're here.
Gotcha.
Greatest movie. Greatest movie. So and I laughed all the way through it. Eddie Murphy doesn't get enough credit, I think, for his performance in this movie. He plays something like 7 roles in the movie, including a Jewish person who just hangs out in a barbershop. And no one knew that it was Eddie Murphy until the end of the movie when it says, "Hey, that's Eddie Murphy." And Arsenio Hall plays, I think, 4 or 5
Mhm.
roles also, and he's fantastic in the movie. And then, of course, there are other people, John Amos as McDowell's. And that's also a movie where I can look around and say, hey, I know that place, I know this place, I know that place, because there's a
Yeah.
film a lot on location in Queens. So I just had to have a blast with Coming to America every time I watch it, and I'm pretending that the sequel didn't happen. I'm so next couple of movies. Speak to me, my love of self-aware movies, especially if they're self-aware spoofs, I guess. Because this movie is a spoof, but a lot of people don't understand that it's a spoof, and that is the original Scream.
Okay, yeah.
It is 100% a spoof of slasher movies. I mean, it's a comedy. It's a comedy that so happens to scare some people. Put
Hmm.
it that way. And for me, a good spoof is yes, it makes fun of something, but whatever it's making fun of, it has a love for that thing. And being directed by Wes Craven, he very clearly has a love for horror. That's what made him a household name, more or less, if when you talk about horror. And then on top of having love for whatever it is you're making fun of, it tells its own story despite the tropes that's making fun of, because every genre, every whatever the source material, they have certain tropes. That's what a spoof does. It makes fun of those tropes. And this movie manages to poke fun at those tropes, tell you that they're poking fun at those tropes, and then still use those tropes to make a great narrative. And that's why it is my favorite horror movie. When people always call it horror, and you got to categorize it as horror, but for me, it's always been a dark comedy. And
Gotcha.
yeah, and that's why I've never really liked any of the scary movie franchise. For me, those movies, it's like, okay, here's a scene from another movie. We're just gonna add something dumb or gross to it and call that a spoof. And it just never worked for me. The
Gotcha.
Scream was a true spoof.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another spoof is also actually, you know what? I'm gonna switch the order of this because this is a spoof, but this is the movie, one of the movies that it's spoofing. And this movie is a terrible movie by objective standards, meaning there are boom shots, boom mics in the shot all the time. You can see bad editing, punches and kicks missed by a mile and a half. But I love this movie. It's hilarious, and that is Dolomite, Rudy Ray Moore. If you're not familiar with Dolomite, a few years back, Eddie Murphy made the movie My Name is Dolomite, and it is
Hmm.
about the making of this movie. And he plays this person, Rudy Ray Moore, and who pretty much made this movie by hook or crook, any way he could, getting money here and there and putting it together. And it's the most black exploitation story you could have. He's in jail, he's a pimp, and he is gotten out of jail by the cops who want him to work with them to bust a drug dealer. And so he has to go and try to get information on this other drug dealer, but at the same time, he's also still going back to pimping, and and he's got an army of martial arts trained prostitutes. It's a wild movie. He talks in rhyme half the time, so it's crazy. And he made a whole career of this character, and this is the first movie of that. And like I said, it's objectively a bad movie, but it's so bad that it's just fantastic.
Gotcha.
And so it's put a smile on my face. The movie that makes fun of it and a lot of other black exploitation movies that I also go to is Black Dynamite. And that is Michael J. White on the cover there. This was a passion project for him. He did a lot to get this movie made. And this one is also a very plain, very clear black exploitation plot. He was a secret agent, but then he's kind of on the outs. His brother has gotten killed because of what he was involved in, drugs he was on, and his old employers have come back to him to help them clean up the streets. So he's gonna go clean up the streets now, and if you're familiar with black exploitation, there's lots of martial arts, there's nudity, there's bad editing, like I said, with boom mics and sometimes odd cuts in films, and they capture that so perfectly here. And for just to ruin one joke for everybody, but as I said, in Dolomite, a boom mic pops up, and they just make the movie. They're just not really
Hmm.
worried about it, and nobody makes a mention of it. And I highly doubt that they even knew until after it was filmed. And it's like, okay, we don't have enough money to do it again, so it's in the movie. Well, when it happens in Black Dynamite, he's kind of talking to a character, and the mic kind of drops into view here, and you see him. He's giving his line, but then he's kind of looking up at the mic, like, we're gonna we and that kind of thing. Throughout the movie, there's another movie where the fight scene, and one of the characters accidentally hits him, and he gets angry, and he starts to say something to the character, and then all of a sudden we get a cut, and we go back where he's delivering his line,
Oh,
and
really?
yeah. So I just really have a blast with that movie. That always just cracks me up.
Cool.
There you have
That's
it.
that's awesome, man. Dell,
Thank
this
you.
has been good. I what I love about this series, man, is I always learn new films, and I always get to go and leave these conversations and watch trailers. So
Cool.
that's
Cool.
what I'll be doing, man.
Do it.
Yeah. Thanks for doing this. I know you got to run, but what is coming up on the channel maybe that you might want to let people know about?
Well, by this time that you're watching this out there, this guy on that side will be have already sat beside me with our roles reversed, and he's going to be my guest on Movie Swap. So go back and catch the replay of that. Over the next few weeks, I've got a few different movie swaps coming up, uh, and trying to get some other videos in there, working on that. And also, I'm sorry, another thing that will have happened by the time this comes out, more than likely, is on Thursday night for me, or tomorrow night, I will be on Convicted Cinephiles channel, Derek, and we'll be trying to figure out what is the greatest superhero movie of all time. He has a superhero movie tournament, so that's going to be a blast. So go check out that replay too.
Cool. Awesome. Friends, all links and stuff will be down below for Dell's YouTube channel, Instagram. Go check out the Movie Swap series. It is a lot of fun. Dell, thank you so much, man. I really do appreciate this.
Oh man, thank you for having me. I had a blast. I can just get to talk about stuff I like.
Me too, man. Well, thanks so much, and I'll talk to you later.
All right, man.
Take care.